Hello everyone, I am thirteene, and today we're going to be continuing the stream of pseudo combo decks that are too slow for modern. So tonight we're playing blue-green turns. So still haven't really corrected the Scryfall images yet, so kind of going to go blow through the deck tech. I know it's also something that most people end up skipping anyway, so probably need to get through it a little faster. What this deck is trying to do though is take a lot of turns in a row and then eventually win after taking multiple turns. So, of course, the first cards we need to address are take extra turn cards. We have several of them. Some are miracles, some go back into the deck, some are pretty stock. Next step up, we have our win conditions. So this list is not running any Snapcaster Mages. One of the traditional ways that this list wins is to play a Snapcaster Mage, take an extra turn, and then each turn swing in for 2. We're kind of going a different route because we have green. We're adding Nissa. Nissa's ultimate makes our lands 5/5 elementals. Definitely shortens the clock a lot. Jace the Mind Sculptor can Fate Seal and then exile the opponent's deck. Basically, though, per usual, opponents really just need to scoop when they've lost. Probably going to run into a couple of moments where that's not going to happen. I did a dry run with this deck because it is a different strategy, and I actually had a couple of people point out that the deck was tedious, they weren't having fun. Well, you're not supposed to tell your opponent that their deck is being unfair and competitive. You're supposed to concede, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And then to follow it up, we have some enablers here. Wilderness Reclamation will untap all of our lands, so we get additional mana. Dictate and Howling Mine will draw cards. Of note, they make our opponents draw cards. So Dictate has the benefit of having flash. Howling Mine is just going to not be great, but if we're drawing 2 cards a turn, and then we're taking multiple turns, we're netting additional cards, we're getting our combo on. So yeah, that's the deck. We're adding green for the Wilderness Reclamation. Growth Spiral is probably my new favorite card. I love to explore. Being instant speed makes it fantastic. And yeah, Nissa fits really well into this deck. But we got our first game, so let's go ahead and move on over. I need to correct the screen a little bit. Shrinky, shrinky, shrinky. And what do we have? We have some very expensive miracles and a Howling Mine. I believe we're going to be okay to ship this back. We have 7 mana for our first turn spell, and I'd prefer the miracles be in the deck, so let's go ahead and ship that on back. And we have a single land, one of our pseudo turn spells, and a Howling Mine. We get a scry into a land, hopefully. And then have Howling Mine to go off. We do have multiple cards within our mana curve that we want to do, but if we die on turn 4, we're kind of screwed. Depending on what we're up against, Giga Drouse might be our first time lock spell for 1 mana. Let's go ahead and make the chat box a wee bit bigger. Alright, so we're playing against Prison, more than likely. Possibly Affinity. Looking a little bit more like Affinity. So I don't see much incentive to Giga Drouse yet. We can use it to tap down lands against spell decks or creatures against aggro decks. If we see a Cranial Plating here, we'll probably be a little bit more inclined to Giga Drouse. Otherwise, we just hope to draw a land. Howling Mine is going to benefit our opponent probably a lot more than us until we get our turns on. But that's a good step. So let's run out Howling Mine, hope that we don't die. It's very possible that they drop an Arcbound Ravager, have 4 artifacts to crack. Ink Moth will be quite big. Opponent's on Galvanic Blast, so still only virtual 4 artifacts, so I think we have 2 turns. So that's 5, potentially 8 if they have 3 in a hand. Alright, so they're on the old Izzet build. Thought Cast isn't nearly as prevalent as it used to be, but it can be blue draw 2 cards. No firm finishers yet, though, is a good sign. Alright, so growth spiral showing it a little bit awkward here. We do run a lot of lands. I believe it's 23 total. Oh, our list is out of date. We actually have 4 Misties and 11 islands. That's 9, 23. Yeah, we have 23 lands. Probably just going to be on Dictate here. If they end up dropping something like Cranial Plating, probably just tap down all their creatures. Interesting, they're on Shrapnel Blast. Alright, so they're on a very aggressive build. We're currently looking at 5 damage on the ground. And if they have Shrapnel Blast, that means they're on 4 Galvanic Blasts. We could just be dead here. Still nothing of impact yet. If they do have the Galvanic Blast, we're dead, but kind of just know that going in. And they're on Experimental Frenzy. Okay. So we are getting this turn, but I don't believe it's going to be enough. Alright, so there's the Jace, but we're on Cryptic Command and hoping that they don't have an instant in the top 4 cards of their deck. Are there any other outs here? Nope, just Cryptic Command. So Cryptic Command has 4 modes to it. You can counter target spell, bounce a permanent, tap all creatures your opponents control, or draw a card. It's very flexible in what it can do. Our opponent can only play cards off the top of their library, and they can't play cards from their hand. So as they draw cards, if there is a Galvanic Blast on top of their deck, they can cast it. Otherwise, they have to pay 4 mana to crack the Experimental Frenzy. Correct sequencing here would be attack first to make us tap down. Yep. So they currently have red and red. So bouncing lands isn't going to do anything for us. So we're just going to have to tap down and hope that they don't have anything here. Playing this Experimental Frenzy may have been a mistake for our opponent. They were going to be drawing 3 cards this turn, as opposed to seeing 1 off the top of their deck. If they did have the correct stops and actually could cast the instants off the top of their deck, they'd probably be fine. But we're also just trying to draw into a Time Warp and a land here. Wilderness Reclamation would be a little interesting, but I don't think it'd be enough for us. If they have the Galvanic Blast, they can just destroy the element. Oh. Yeah, that's a Blink Moth, isn't it? That may have been a decent tap target, but we'll see what they're doing. Interesting. So they had plays off the top of their deck, but they waited. Okay, well, if they would have done that pre-combat, we'd be dead right now, so I guess that's fine. We can't do anything with the breeding pool and the part of the water veil. So Serum Visions into nothing here. I think we're just dead. unfortunately just don't really have any outs here. We just didn't see the cards fast enough, and our opponent did explode pretty hard. Well, there's the Time Warp and the Wilderness Reclamation, but we have no untapped lands, and none of our 4-drops will in the game, so let's go ahead and go to sideboard. Alright, so definitely want the Fogs here. Fog will prevent all combat damage for a turn, so if they go all in on an attack, we can just prevent it. Pithing Needles are always interesting for Arcbound Ravager and or their man lands, but I don't think we necessarily need it. Void Snare, return non-land permanent to its owner's hand. One of the fastest ways that we'll die is versus a Inkmoth Nexus with infect damage, but that's going to require cranial plating or a Arcbound Ravager. Void Snare is a little more tempting in that regard. We'll just bounce whatever they are investing all into. Need to update the record. Yeah, their last video is pretty rough. Alright, line you up a little bit better. Okay, as far as Dispel is probably the other better consideration. That would get their Galvanic Blast, which they have at least 4 of, and Shrapnel Blast, I'm guessing they have at least 2 of. That is a very good chunk of damage. So that might be a consideration, but I'm guessing we don't want to cut more. Wilderness Reclamation seems a little bit slow for this matchup. And probably just a Howling Mine. But that'd mean no Dispels. Howling Mine allowing them to draw 2 cards that cost 0 is going to get them a lot more advantage than us, but we do need to be able to draw multiple cards when we start going off. Pulse of Marauders at gain 6 life doesn't feel beneficial enough, especially at 3 mana, and that just might be it. We will take the play. And yeah, this looks fun. Again, not very excited about the Howling Mine, but it'll at least get us started. Being on the play is going to be a significant step up over the deck that wants to drop its entire hand on turn 1. Or potentially play the top of their deck for free. And we do need to get a green source, so going to be a breeding pool here. Yep, don't care about the signal pests. I'll go get my breeding pool. And Howling Mine feels like the safest bet here. So opponent did start off with the Inkmoth Nexus, so it's very possible that we can be dead in like 2 turns here if they have the Arcbound Ravager and or Plating. Both of those care about the number of artifacts that they have. Giga Drouse is kind of interesting though. If they do want to try to commit for infect damage here, that means that we can tap it in the future. Looks like they're on the pure damage plan. Given the number of Shrapnel Blasts and Galvanic Blasts, it makes a lot of sense that they would use Infect as a backup plan as opposed to the primary plan. Alright, so Signal Pests are currently representing +3 damage on Infect or +2 on regular. I kind of want to see what Serum Visions is going to set up for us, see if we can potentially get a miracle for our next turn, like that. Although, that's unfortunate that we just drew the other one. So that can go on top for our first draw. I'm not horribly opposed to another land, but we're going to be drawing plenty of cards, so we'll see another one. And then I think we're just on the tap down plan. They're probably going to invest in it. Excuse me. They're probably going to invest in a creature here. One of their creature lands. Giga Drouse has Replicate. You can just pay blue to target multiple things. It does create a copy, so the red Replicate can get around Chalice of the Void, which is actually very relevant. The blue one usually doesn't matter too much. This is just allowing us to tap down problems to potentially get an extra turn for X mana, as opposed to needing to get up to 5 for Time Warp or 7 for Temporal Mastery and or Nexus of Fate. Yep, so Blinkmoth is being activated. Do I want to do something now or during begin combat? We can go to begin combat. Yep, so that would have told opponent that they couldn't commit into this creature if we had activated then, which is why we needed to wait. So Blink Moth is potentially going to be the biggest creature here. We want to replicate one time to use all of our mana efficiently. And this one's going to be summoning 6, so they can't use the Springleaf Drum or the mana from the Nexus here to actually take advantage of that. Yep, float your mana. We'll get our copy and tap down, sure, the foil Signal Pest. And see what kind of damage opponent can do. I'm assuming they're getting in for 2. They could potentially tap down the Signal Pest for red and Shrapnel Blast. But that's only 7 damage, and we're set up to take probably at least 4 turns in a row now. Yep, there's the Shrapnel Blast. Getting rid of the Springleaf Drum, interesting. So they must not have a lot of red in hand. Wow, and they had a 4 of a kind. Alright, well, we will reveal our Temporal Mastery. Take an extra turn. And I need to leave the green available in case there's an island on top so I can cast a Growth Spiral. Which I did not. But that's fine. We're still netting an additional card here and making our land drop, so perfectly happy with everything that went down there. And this is where we start to combo off. So let's go ahead and start taking our extra turns, drawing extra cards. Not that yet. We want another turn. All the turns. Alright, so this is where Wilderness Reclamation has been a little awkward for me. So Nexus of Fate is very castable off Wilderness Reclamation, but I have to actually make my extra turn spell here. So Wilderness Reclamation won't continue to be good until we get at least a couple more lands so that we can take an extra turn and cast it. So 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 mana means this is coming down. We get cast our Growth Spiral for free, put a land into play, take an extra turn. Okay, so the fog isn't terrible here. I want to get down Wilderness Reclamation first. Then we're going to dump all of our mana into this Nissa. We can start stacking the top of our deck. Love the Cryptic, don't need the land. Gonna go fetch now because it's gonna be untapped thanks to Wilderness Reclamation, and then we have Cryptic up. We can also draw into this Mikikoro to get another Cryptic. It's probably not as relevant, but Fogs are going to get a little bit of value here so that we can make sure to hold up Cryptic for whatever they go to cast. Opponent might be trying to bait out the Cryptic here. We did show them one, but Fog's going to get more value. We'll also see what they decide to attack. They do currently have lethal on us. I did. That was a good point. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, so a lot of battle cries. That was probably a mistake. Oh well, and this is here to eventually ultimate with the extra turns. Besides, Cryptic's not an extra turn spell, so it's fine if it goes away. Probably will be activating Miko Koro here. Especially if they don't hit their land drop. They're probably wishing they didn't sacrifice the Springleaf Drum for red, so that they could start experimental frenzying, but guess they had a backup. And I don't want that. That's a bad etch champion. Bad. Alright. So we definitely have a game here then. I did learn my lesson. Let's shuffle first. Extra turn, rest on bottom. Dictate can come out. Draw the extra turn spell. We've already got one lined up. That can go on top. Don't need another. And this is where Miko Koro actually shines, as we actually get to draw an extra card with the Wilderness Reclamation. I actually meant to put Search for Azcanta back in this deck. I picked that up for a reason. But, yeah, things are tightening down for opponent here. So, cast with Awaken. We'll target that guy. Take our extra turn, get our beats in for 6. Make a couple more creature lands. And there's lethal. So Fog definitely did some work there. I don't like Haze of Pollen, despite the fact that it has cycling, because it costs a little bit too much. Good old Fog. But run it back. Opponent definitely had the 4 of a kind on the Signal Pest. Took me a second to pull that up. That card hasn't felt stellar to me. It's great in the go wide strategies. I feel like it does do a little bit better work in Hardened Scales, where you're making a bunch of the servo tokens and you're expecting your Hangerback Walkers to die. I understand it's a colorless 1 mana thing for the Experimental Frenzy deck. I'm assuming there's not much better you could run out, but they did have a little bit of a slower start because of that. As far as this hand, Nissa's not anything until a turn 3 play, and we're going to be running out Dictate for sure then. We have our mana, though, as well as a way to kind of set it up, so I'm good to keep this. And opponent has a couple of 1/1s already. Looks like they kept a 0 lander. Alright, so Reclamation. I definitely don't want the land. The Wilderness Reclamation is going to be better if we get Nexus of Fate. We only run the 1 just to make sure we don't deck ourselves. As well, because 7 costs a lot. I think right now we're just looking for an extra turn spell, so we can just ship that away. It is one of the more powerful cards in the deck, and one of the main reasons we're splashing green, but without a Miko Koro or something along those lines, it's definitely harder to make an argument for it. An opponent brought in Thoughtseize. That must mean they took their Shrapnel Blast out. I'm assuming this Nissa looks more threatening, but the correct call's probably got to be the Dictate, just because we have no other enablers in our hand. Nissa's going to come out as a 1/1 and can immediately die to their board state, so... Yep, correct call on the Dictate. And really need to see some action here. Opponent must be on an anemic draw, though. 1 card left in hand. Currently on the table for 4, 6, so we are on a 3-turn clock here. Drawing the extra land's not great. This will go get our green source, though. Try to make it as pain-free as possible for next turn. Even if they don't have a whole lot going on, like they have Etched Champion stuck in hand or something along those lines, it's still going to be a little hard to get through this. We're basically going to need to see Miracle Temporal Masteries just to make sure that we can stay alive long enough to keep it going. This fetch isn't shortening our clock at all, so that's fine. And there's Jace. So Nissa's coming out, hopefully is just going to distract our opponent. She's going to have to soak up 3 damage if that's the case. Can also try to set up future draws. Next turn when Jace comes down, Bouncing Signal Pest is going to slow the clock by 3 damage, but we're going to be at 3 and they're going to have all the power and toughness they need. That Thoughtseize was actually pretty bad. Being able to draw 2 here would have at least set us up to have a shot. I wonder if opponent brought in Spell Pierce. Or Stubborn Denial. Alright. Interesting. What do they have that grows large enough for Stubborn Denial? I haven't seen any cranial platings from them. Alright, so Cryptic is probably our best draw here. Yep. So take the honorable way out. We're dead on table. And let's go to match 2. So Experimental Frenzy. That does feel like a rough matchup, especially when we're letting them draw extra cards. That game 4 probably didn't keep the best hand, but they didn't either, and they were able to definitely take it. That Thoughtseize was pretty painful. Current match is 0-0. Overall, lost to Experimental Frenzy. Current hand. A lot of card draw. I'm happy enough when I see a lot of card draw. Alright, so these days this looks a lot like Phoenix deck. Could also be potentially Fetch Storm, Grixis Death's Shadow. Looking more like Grixis Death's Shadow. So they can put us under a clock pretty fast if it is Grixis Death's Shadow. I'd prefer not to take as much damage as possible. So these are probably going to get islands, and I'll probably just take the shock on turn 1. We do have, okay, pretty much confirmed Grixis Death's Shadow because of the Mishra's Bauble. We do have plays until at least turn 4, so I have to expect what to do with these lands, so that's why I'm reading Shock Island Island. That's going to put us on the table for 4, and hopefully they're not going to just cycle Street Wraith, cycle Street Wraith. Also should be expecting a Thoughtseize in our near future. And it always feels bad whenever you draw your Miracle. Alright, Serum Visions. Do not need or want more lands. Ship it on over to opponent. We should definitely keep in mind that Stubborn Denial is going to be a thing from them, both for the Force Spike effect as well as the just counter target non-creature spell negate side of it. They're getting well within range of being able to cast their Death Shadows. Faithless Looting. Is this Grixis Phoenix? I don't believe the Battle Rage versions of Shadow actually run the Faithless Looting. I think they just count on cantripping their way into Gurmag Angler, but we can see. So it's going to put 6 cards in the bin. The black, they don't really have anything of value, so we might be seeing a Gurmag Angler here. A lot more likely now that they have the Street Wraith in there, so they don't have to get rid of the Faithless Looting. This is one of the issues with running these slower, not deterministic combo decks. Like, staring down a turn 2 Gurmag Angler is putting a real clock on us. Like, that's nothing to scoff at. Especially when our game plan requires them to draw an additional card next turn. They have 4 cards in hand, so I'm expecting at least 1 Stubborn Denial, probably a Lightning Bolt. I'd assume if they had a Thoughtseize, they would have used it by now, unless their sequencing up to this point is setting up for a Thoughtseize and a Death Shadow off of their current lands. They did get rid of a ton of them, so I know they're going to be hitting their 3rd land drop here. And unfortunately, Death Shadow usually runs up to 2 Kolaghan's commands, so it's very possible that they draw their extra card here, make their land drop, destroy the Howling Mine, hit us for 2, and put us on a 2-turn clock. There's a lot in the realm of possibilities with our opponent's deck, especially with how long they've been tanking on some of their decisions. They're currently 3 minutes behind, which means they've had a lot of decisions to make. But right now they're definitely getting their beats in. Unfortunately, if they do have a Stubborn Denial in hand, we're probably just dead. Yep, they already knew what we were on because of the Howling Mine. There aren't really any other decks in Modern that are trying to use this, because giving your opponent an extra draw is just way too much upside for them. So here they're probably taking Dictate, and then just expect to counter whatever we run out that has any value before turn 7. Unless they did pitch all of their lands here, then who knows. But I'm expecting a Shock Land with a Death Shadow, and then we'll just be on the clock for dead. Or they just let it go. Alright, well, let's play a land and see if we survive another turn. So the Kolaghan's Command and a Battle Rage would be lethal, but they didn't have it. They missed their land drop. Battle Rage would put us to 2, which means they'd need a land and a bolt. Alright, so they definitely had the Stubborn Denial, otherwise they would have left up the opportunity for bolt here. Alright, so Giga Drowse means we're going to survive for 1 more turn. Stubborn Denial will only be able to counter part of this. But we need to target both creatures twice in order to get around the Stubborn Denial, so we have to ship it back here. Means that any of our 5 mana extra turns are live draws, but it's not looking great. So I don't want them to be able to draw and play a white source, so we're going to stop on their upkeep. We're going to make 3 copies, which is going to cost 4 mana, and this is being done this way because we have to make sure that their creatures cannot get in this turn. So if they counter Giga Drowse, we'll still get the copy here. And I think opponent's trying to figure out how exactly this is going to work. Right, not really sure what else I can even comment here. As I said, opponent's been running a little slow. Okay, so they think they're going to be able to counter it. So stubborn denial. They counter the real copy. Unfortunately, that's not exactly how you want to do that, because now we're going to get the replicate and we're going to get 3 copies of this. Then we're actually just going to tap down their land, since we know that we've already used their counter spell. So this one's targeting Death Shadow, this one's targeting the untapped land, and that's hitting Gurmag Angler, so 4th copy can just snag Gurmag Angler again. So our sequencing here was in a way to... Yes, that's actually a very good point. But our sequencing was just to try to get around the fact that if they did have Stubborn Denial, they wouldn't be able to counter both of the creature taps. So we did what we needed to. Yeah, Growth Spiral has been one of my new favorite cards, like enabling miracles and hitting your extra land drops and being able to hold up blue spells with 2 mana and still progress your state if they don't do anything of impact has just been fantastic. Like, this was a well-designed card. Alright, let's see what they actually value here, because it might actually need to be the Growth Spiral. At some point I'm going to have to build a deck with 8 Mystic Snakes, the new 4 mana one, as well as the OG Mystic Snake. It's just been... it feels like everything I want. Alright, so we get an extra turn, then we get Wilderness Reclamation. But we do actually need to draw something here, unfortunately. So, let's see if we've got good running. We've got 2 draws. That's kind of a thing. Oh, Part the Waterville's going to do it. Okay, so Wilderness Reclamation. None of these are instants. Alright, so that would be 7. I want to keep Nexus for... Wait, yeah, that's the turn that we can do it. So this is going to be Wilderness Reclamation. This will be the Growth Spiral. Go to end step. Untap all of our lands. Take an extra turn. And this should be locked up. We want the extra turn. Go to end step, untap. Now we're drawing a lot of cards. And shenanigans are on. Alright, so we have 8 mana, which means we can Serum Visions before Temporal Mastery hardcast. Nothing we want here. I probably should have saved that for Jay since we had to part the Waterville, but I really want to awaken this. Luckily, we're still way ahead on time. Nexus of Fate is fantastic. We can put Serum back, Temporal Mastery on top. Oh, I don't want to do that because that'll make me shuffle. Alright, that's fine. Discard Howling Mine. Oh, that was my bad. I thought we took the extra turn. Okay, so tap all creatures. Ooh, that's actually unfortunate. Yeah, tap all creatures, draw a card, then we'll have to counter. I was trying to play as fast as possible and ended up making some mistakes there, but not that. I want cryptic. Counter that. Draw a card. I don't want to draw a card. Yeah, I do. Means that I won't be able to cast my miracle, but concessions. If they had the other Stubborn Denial, it's going to feel really bad. Especially because I had multiple turn spells in hand. Oh well, it should be impossible for them to kill me here, because they'd have to have a mountain and a 4 damage burn spell to the face. They may have potentially drawn into another Stubborn Denial, but they'd have to draw 2 in order for it to matter. We currently have 9 mana, 10 mana. That does probably mean fetch lands are turned off if they drop a red source, though. Yeah, that's fine. They took part the Water Veil. Alright. Okay, so extra turn. Nissa for 5 means she'll be able to ultimate. And we're shuffling here, so the scry didn't matter. But we have 2 turns backed up. And that's taking down Death's Shadow. Alright, sideboarding. I really don't like Stubborn Denial. I'm going to be bringing in 4 Dispels because I really don't like Stubborn Denial. Fog seems interesting. They are going to be attacking for at least 5 damage most of the time that they're attacking. Again, they have Bolts and Kolaghan's Command, so that's probably not the most effective card that we can have, but at least stem the bleeding a little bit. I don't think we care enough about life gain for Pulse. This is mainly in here for burn because that matchup is horrible. Pithing Needle can snag one of their lands and mana screw them, but that feels like it's overboarding. As far as what we want to cut, Wilderness Reclamation probably just needs to cut 1, possibly 2. They don't punish us nearly as badly as Experimental Artifacts did with the Howling Mine, so I'm inclined to leave those in, although they're one of the first cards I usually look at. Part the Water Veil is a win condition, but if we go off, we go off. I want to leave 1 just so that we're not reliant on Jace and or Nissa. It might be more correct to cut a Jace over the part, though. Not really sure what else I want to do here. Probably just trim some number of Serum Visions, and probably has to be the other Wilderness Reclamation, not as many Dispels. And if they're taxing our mana base growth, might be a little loose. I can't imagine I did this right. This is a hard matchup, though. They're very hard on the tempo, and I'm expecting their soft counters to be very effective when we're trying to cast things that cost 6 and 7. Swan Song wouldn't be able to hit anything of merit over Dispel. Yeah, I just run it like this. Post-boarding starting to look a little bit more like mono blue turns, but we have a couple of green cards in here. I do feel like Fog's going to have a lot of value, especially if it ends up eating a counter spell fairly early. They were on a turn 2 Gurmag Angler, though, and we ended up doing 5 points of damage to ourselves off of our lands. That's quite a showing. The Giga Drouse being able to get around counter spells is quite good. I could possibly see this being a more of. We did see in Game 1 against the Experimental Frenzy deck how it can be very hard to say, like, oh, we don't have 6 mana for your 6/0 cost creatures on turn 1. But it's a fantastic card. Replicate was also a pretty good mechanic. Shattering Spree is way too expensive for what it does, but let's see, what is it at these days? $5. It's the red version of this, destroy target artifact, but it gets around Chalice. Given that was a common and it's in the guild kits, it's pretty impressive though. We have Howling Mines, Growth Spirals, draws, an extra turn spell. I think that's everything that we want. And interesting, no turn 1 play. Replicate feels like one of those cards that like really goes up as you understand rules interactions. Like when I cast it for 4, my opponent clearly couldn't figure out what was going on and they were trying to figure out exactly how to time things, and it feels like it's fixed Storm, which was probably the entire mentality going into it. But like being able to get multiple copies just interacts on a way that's significantly harder for cards to break. Like if Grape Shot was just Replicate for red, it would be essentially Gut Shot, but Replicate. That would be pretty cool. Yeah, also wouldn't fuel very many unfair strategies. Alright, so sticking to this game, what are opponents doing? I haven't seen anything I care about a lot so far. The fact that this is instant makes me very happy, though, because what's probably going to happen is they're probably going to be holding up 4-spike Stubborn Denial for next turn. So I can Growth Spiral and intend to drop 2 Howling Mines the following turn, and we're basically going to win if that resolves. Yeah, they're not even interacting with us, so I'm on Growth Spiral into double Howling Mine plan, and we're not under enough pressure that that's going to be a problem. Yep, so opponent's going to try to go for something here. What is the sequencing on that? If they want to take the shock anyway, is that just that they try to not draw the land? I've never actually tried to pilot Death Shadow competitively. I would think that if you're intending to make a play, you'd probably just want to go for the play, as opposed to fetching your lands to try to force an action on your opponent's end step. Oh well, they have all their mana. There's Mr. Fish. Of note, they did leave up Stubborn Denial, but I didn't think that they were going to try to do anything with it. Probably would have been better sequencing to wait until end step in case they wanted to try to Thoughtseize or drop a Death Shadow there, but and I'm still inclined to run out double Howling Mine. So it is a hard counter now. Ceremonious Rejection. Interesting. Alright. That is very interesting. That hits 4 cards in our deck. Did they think we were bringing in Relic? I mean, I guess we technically have the Pithing Needles, but they didn't know that. They did see the Howling Mine. It is a valid target, but bringing in 2 of these to hit 4 cards is like Aether Vial level tech, and that's probably never the right decision. Alright, so opponent has a lot of action in hand. They have Stubborn Denial turned on to be a hard counter, so I just have to assume that it's a hard counter at this point. We're never going to deal with Gurmag Angler in a meaningful way unless we draw a Cryptic Command. I'm thinking this turn I want to play this tapped, run out of Serum Visions and Dictate, and possibly set up for a Miracle turn. But we're kind of hitting the point that this is getting to be too much pressure for us to keep up with. We're on a 2-turn clock. I guess I could just run out the island and try to Time Warp, but that doesn't set me up for anything for next turn. Yeah, I think I'm on Serum Visions with Dictate. The Time Warp will just get countered. We're giving them too much gas, and they clearly brought in more counters to deal with us, so... Yeah, and I'm fine with that. Although I do want to play my land. Thank you. So they're going to have 5 cards in hand. Alright, well, you get Time Warp. Let's see what you got, opponent. That resolved. So Miracle's going to be the best, but that's 4 of 47. That's actually like 8% chance. That's not terrible. We're drawing 3 cards, though, so we can hit our land drop. We've seen 2 counterspells out of them. They at least have 3 more Stubborn Denials left in their deck. Funny enough, I think Gigadrouse is probably our next best draw. Just buy us 1 more turn and 3 more cards. Possibly Time Warp with Dispel backup, but that's asking a lot for 3 draw steps. We didn't even see any fetch lands, but we got 7 lands out of 15 cards. It's fair enough in variance, but... we are currently up a match. I'm so bad with my record. I don't know why, but the tiger from the opponent's name looks like Tony the Tiger with excellent donuts. Like, I can't imagine a tiger liking donuts. I just keep picturing Homer Simpson. Alright, are you on double bolt? I assume you would have just double bolted me if that were the case, but... Hey, look at that! So, I need to put the Miracle on the bottom so that I can try to draw into my Dispel. Do you have V-Click? Oh, okay. Probably wanted to wait for my draw steps for that. I mean, this is split second, so I can't counter it anyway. So, opponent's going to go take all of our regular generic Time Warps out of our deck. They really boarded for us. Alright, that land is unfortunate. That land is unfortunate. Well, let's see if this resolves. It does. So we're still in this. There's Nexus. We have enough mana for it. We're still relying on a couple of draw steps, but looking pretty good from here. The one thing I learned when I was playtesting this deck, the multiple copies of Nexus were a little rough. Not to say that they were bad, but they just didn't... 7 mana is a lot to ask of your deck, especially if you're shuffling it back in. You kind of just need that effect to be there. Alright, well... Ooh, I shouldn't have done that. For some reason, I thought Wilderness Reclamation was already out, or this was a Nexus. We still get to take the extra turn, so it's not a problem, but didn't really want that yet. I guess I can activate Miko Koro multiple times now with Wilderness Reclamation out, so we can try to draw into more, but that waters down a draw that we really need. Alright, well, Cryptic is kind of a live draw. First things first, Serum Visions is going to be the best chance at a redraw. Yep, there's Part the Watervel. Jace is fantastic. Howling Mind's probably better. Take our extra turn. Oh, I meant to Growth Spiral. Darn you, Miko Koro. You do a lot of fun things, but you are making me mistap. And I didn't have an extra turn spell. I need to take a little bit more time when I'm actually looking at these. So, Jace is going to go first. And I missequenced. Flooded Strand should have come in to shuffle for Jace. Some struggles today. Alright, well, opponent's shown that they don't have any counter magic, so Cryptic's at least going to tap down their team. So, Wilderness Reclamation, Growth Spiral, Dictate, Cryptic. All seems within the realm of possibility. Unfortunately, going to draw the same card, but I'm going to put in the Flooded Strand so I can shuffle away the last basic. And then I want to stop on opponent's upkeep while they don't have counter magic, so I can tap down the team. Tap all creatures, draw a card. I will reveal Temporal Mastery. That seems fantastic. And it's on opponent to draw 2 bolts here. Which, they're drawing 3 cards, so it's not impossible, but I honestly don't think they've shown us a bolt yet. I've taken a lot of turns to still be 5 minutes up on clock. Okay, so right now we have 1 extra turn stacked up. We can drop Nissa and Ultimator and just win. And not have to worry about getting an extra one. We have found our opponent plenty of extra cards, though. Redundant Death Shadow means that they're probably not on a lot of action. They only have the one red source, so we should be good here. My local card shop doesn't have any Death Shadow, but I feel like I play against it every time I run through a league on Magic Online. I heard it lost a lot of traction, but it is still just like the premier tempo deck in Modern. It definitely hedges out anything Delver's been trying to do. All the extra card draws have let them even hit their land drops and try to play out more cards, and they have a lot of gas into the late game, but when we're just taking multiple turns in a row, it's a little hard for them to keep up. Alright, so opponent's actually representing counter magic here. I'm not very happy about running Nissa if I don't know that we have counter magic and we have the extra turns, so we have Dispels, I think 3 of them that we can get into. We can run, yep, okay, that works. So Nissa's going to come down. Is that enough? That's enough for her to die. One more. Okay, so for 7, get a couple of 5/5s. Bouncy, bouncy. I guess on the Death Shadow, so they have to trade. And then this should be our Temporal Mastery turn that we had to exile. So we should have one more after this. When we untap with Wilderness Reclamation, I'm just going to Nexus, though. We have this locked up. Just need our opponent to actually play through their turn. Oh, you're correct. They do have flying. I should probably read my cards. The problem is I actually started recording videos, and like these are all the decks that I've been playing recently. Turn, Zur, Doubling Season of Walkers, a bad version of Death Shadow. Like, I'm typically on blue-white control. I should probably read the cards I'm trying to play with, though. Opponent is dead here. They might just be saltily trying to run out the clock. There it is. GG's opponent. So we lost to Experimental Artifacts, Affinity, I guess, and we beat Death Shadow. Let's go ahead and get in the next one. The deck's doing what I want it to, though. Like it's a little bit slow because we do have so many expensive cards, but there's just so much power and emphasis in taking the extra turn. This is the Nissa we've been playing with. 2 lands. They have their elemental creatures with flying and haste. I actually tried to run this Nissa in the Doubling Season deck, and I couldn't put Doubling Season into play off of her. Like, that's probably one card that I really need to sit down and read, especially if I'm going to continue trying to play with it. Alright, this hand. We're on the play. I'd be a little more inclined to keep this on the draw because we'd have a draw step to get a land, and then Serum Visions, and then Howling Mine will fix most problems. I think this has to be a mulligan, though. And this is a little bit better just because of the Scry. We also have 3 redraws and a Howling Mine. Yep, land's great. Cryptic. So next turn will be Growth Spiral into Serum Visions, and then... yeah, I think I want both of these. We'll hide the Cryptic, though. Give us an extra turn to cover it. And Dredge and or Hollow One. Looking more like Hollow One. Alright, my go-to strategy to beat Hollow One is typically make sure that they don't have an explosive start, make them stagger a little bit, and then all their cards have a lot of synergy, so if we take that synergy away, they end up losing a lot of power. This strategy, though, would have been give them a Howling Mine. Okay, part the Water Veil costs 6. I'm good to put that away. I want my 5th land for that Time Warp. Oh, it just might be Jund. Actually, it's looking significantly more like Jund. Hi, Goif. I'm definitely going to let you hit me once. Hopefully opponent's just on Liliana here, and they run it out pre-combat. Otherwise, I'm happy to take 4 damage here. Alright, Mr. Scoos. Counter draw. There might be an argument to bounce the Goif, but I believe I'm going to be taking multiple turns. I guess I don't have any multiple draw steps. Oh well. I assume I'm going to be taking a lot of turns here in a second, so I'm okay to just draw into more action. And that means one more hit from the Goif. If this is a Bloodbraid Elf into a Bolt or a K command, it's going to look really bad. Okay, well, it's not Bloodbraid. Liliana would be a little disappointing, but Dictate will be online. Okay, so opponents taking the stance that they have the pressure and they need to be the ones to be interacted with. So they didn't commit anything else to the board. Unfortunately, we are falling behind, and one of my considerations here is the fact that if I crack this fetch land, I'm going to be at 6 double bolt range, but I can't really play around the fact that they have double bolt, so I'm just going to have to go for this and jam Howling Mine. If we get another turn, we'll probably be able to take it from there, but we just have to play to our out, which is they are not on double bolt or Bloodbraid Bolt. We might get Assassin's Trophied here. Guess not. Alright, opponent, show me what you got. Mr. Goif makes a triumphant return. And there's the Scoos. Alright, so I get to look at 6 cards. And there's one draw spell. Alright, so this time I'm not going to mess this up. I'm going to put back 2 lands and play our fetch land for turn. And I'm already going to be able to cast my extra turn spell, so just going to grab the Breeding Pool. Take my extra turn, and we should be pretty solid here. Ooh, that's less solid. But we will get an extra turn, so that's fine. Okay, put these 2 back. Land for turn. And this is where the fun begins. Funny enough, we haven't seen the extra turn spell here, but this is pretty deterministic. Okay, Okay, so I want to be able to shuffle. Still haven't seen Nexus, so Wilderness Reclamation can't come down yet. We have 1 extra turn stacked up, now 2. Yep, there we go. Alright, John. I'm concerned with them having Assassin's Trophy. I don't know if that's worth the Dispel or not. We clearly have plenty of basics that we can go get, and them ramping us just means we're probably going to cast a different spell in hand. Pithing Needle can hit Raging Ravine, Liliana the Vel. Liliana the Vel is significantly more threatening. They have Skoos, and they're probably going to stick on it because most of these extra turn decks run a lot of Snapcasters in them. We might run into the same problem with Grixis Death Shadow, that we have a turn that we actually care about Fog. Fogging a Termagoyf attack, or a Termagoyf and a Bloodbraid, or a Raging Ravine can buy us that 1 extra turn. Swan Song. This is more for fringe decks, but it can still hit Assassin's Trophy. It can hit Thoughtseize if need be, so it might be a little bit more of a consideration on the play. This is also a way for us to get around random cards. We can put this in and counter one of our Serum Visions and get a 2/2 flyer, and actually just get the beats while we're taking extra turns with the 2/2 flyer. I honestly don't think we want to change anything. Pithy Needle for Liliana is probably my primary concern here. Just having them discard an extra card seems really painful, but if we're drawing 3 cards and they're having us discard 1, we can probably do alright there. Them having Collective Brutality is making me think Swan Song might be a little bit better. I'm okay to try this. Having 1 version of the card means we're likely not going to draw it, but if we have it and we can snag a 3-mode Collective Brutality, I guess 2 modes since we don't have creatures, that might be alright. And currently up 1 match versus Jund. Current hand, 1 land. If we see a Breeding Pool or a fetch land, this would actually be quite good, but I don't think it's good enough to keep it as it is. And Serum Visions will fix most bad draws. Don't need a second Dictate. Alright, so Serum Visions, find us a land, please. I believe in you. Alright. Oh! I misclicked there. I meant to put this under the land. So, yeah, I don't want that now. We could have taken an extra turn on turn 3, but instead we have to put that away. That's unfortunate. That is one of the nicer things about paper, is like while you are resolving Serum Visions, you can still kind of move the cards around a little bit. Alright, Dark Confidant. Why don't you just draw 3 cards? See if we can get you to discard. Again, if they Assassin's Trophy us, I'm actually perfectly okay with that. I'll just go get a Forest and we can start ramping out. Hey, look at that! Assassin's Trophy. Inquisition. Alright, seeing that we're stuck on lands, they might not do that now. I'm assuming they take Dictate here. Oh, the Serum Visions. Alright. Our hand actually has a nice little curve to it. 2, 3, 4, 6. Feels like a limited hand. Well, there's the Swan Song. And that is most unfortunate. Alright. So we will be taking beats until further notice. But we can start chaining cryptics here soon, so that'll be nice. Swan Song's another one of my cards that are kind of on my pet list. 1 mana, counter target enchantment, sorcery, instant, and its controller gets a 1/1 fly or 2/2 flyer. Yeah, look at that. So that feels good right there. Probably not good enough to bring it in sideboarding tech, but feels pretty good. And they're on the Skoos, so they really don't want to give us a land with that Assassin's Trophy. They also have seen our hand, so they know at least one Cryptic is in their future. Wow. Alright, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No creatures to eat. No Raging Ravine. So we have one more turn, but that turn is going to be Dictate unless we get a Miracle. So our out right now is Miracle on top of the deck with a land, and then follow it up with another land. Not looking great, though. If they have Bolt, it's just over, and they've seen a third of their deck. Interesting, they care about the growth spiral. Funny enough, if the Assassin's Trophy, the Howling Mine here. Yep, they have the Bolt. Wait. You have to have the other one. Yep. Alright, GG's. Huh. I think it just might be a Dispel. The times that I've said they probably have a Bolt just makes me think Dispel's probably better than Swan Song. Snagging the Collective Brutality was cute, but actually we're on the play. I already said it'd probably be better to hit discard. Alright, well, craftable hand. Rampable hand. I think that's everything we want. Oh, that feels so bad. And I have everything I want here. I'm actually going to... Yeah, Temporal Mastery on top, Time Warp on top of that. That means next turn I'll draw Time Warp and have a land drop, and then I'll be able to Miracle the extra turn spell. I just can't Serum Visions now. Opponent's back on the Bob plan. We will definitely take our extra turn. And I'm okay to Serum Visions to try to set up better plays here and take the shock. I really want to be able to Growth Spiral if I can. And of course we see another Miracle. Time Warp to the bottom. I just want to see lands. Growth Spiral being a redraw doesn't cut it. Ooh, now we have a decision. We can Growth Spiral and try to Howling Mine, or we can just play Howling Mine. I'm feeling a little greedy. We've seen a lot of cards, and no land. Alright. You wouldn't know we took an extra turn, but we did. You wouldn't know we had an extra land drop, but we did. Yep. So Cryptic's probably going away here. It's just the most flexible card in our hand. We also have redundant Howling Mines. It's hard to discard and take away a 2 of. It's possible they just take Time Warp because they know it's more crucial to our strategy. Nope, it was a Cryptic. So we're currently at 15 with 5 on the table. That puts us on a 3-turn clock, but virtually a 2-turn clock. And I think that puts us on Dictate, just that they don't draw the extra card. When you let your opponent have an active Dark Confidant for a couple of turns, you really start to fall behind. I can't enable them to draw more cards with our Howling Mine unless I have a very good reason to. Besides, they did show us Assassin's Trophy. It's very possible they'd use Howling Mine to draw a card and then blow it up with Assassin's Trophy. I guess that would ramp us, but Dictate will still do the same thing. Yep, there's the Collective Brutality, multiple modes. Opponent's going to see our hand and know what we're up to, so I'm just going to run that out for F6 value. Opponent's going to take Time Warp here. Then we're currently on the table for 8. They probably don't have another way to get a card type into the graveyard. Yeah, we're just dead. Alright. GG's opponent. Successfully gendered us out. Reset match record. Didn't even... No, we did steal a game from them, I believe. Yeah, we did. Pretty decisive win against... oh my gosh, I already forgot what that was. Death Shadow. Put up a fight in a lot of the games that we played. The problem is that this strategy takes a little bit to go off, and we don't interact with our opponent in a meaningful way until we do. This hand right here, I don't believe we can keep. Our first play is a turn 5 Time Warp. I'd rather sculpt and get a couple of card draw actions into play. Yeah, that's even worse. Alright, well that is a... we need that because it has blue mana. If we could have killed our opponent's Dark Confidant in either of the games that we lost, we probably would have been able to take that. They were just able to pick apart our hand efficiently while they didn't care what happened to their life total. Alright, so Polluted Delta typically leans to multicolored decks. Grabbing a basic island is making me think it's potentially Blue Moon. Death Shadow would have gotten a Shockland. Blue-Red Phoenix would have gotten a Steam Vents. Alright, so it is some kind of spell-based strategy. This is confusing me, though. Polluted Delta should have at least gotten a Watery Grave. Alright, well, we don't have a lot going on, so hopefully our opponent's on a slow start as well. Alright, so they are probably Phoenix, then. Or potentially the blue-red control list. Remand means they're not on Phoenix. It's too hard to cast Remand multiple times in a turn. So we have our 3 for Cryptic, so lands to the bottom. Probably going to run out Miko Koro here and draw an additional card. Giving unknown opponent cards is probably a very bad decision, but I need to start hitting a little bit more action. This hand just isn't going to cut it. And at least doing it on their end step is going to slow it down if they are on a plan similar to Phoenix or... Okay, I'm expecting it through the breach here. We can each draw. If opponent hadn't left mana up, I would definitely jam Wilderness Reclamation here. We would still be able to cast Cryptic Command off, which is a lot of the strength of this deck. But them having open mana is just not something we can handle. So they are on Watery Grave. I feel like I should know what this is. Blue Moon's probably not a thing anymore. Oh, this is Goryo's As Foretold. I should definitely know this. I play this deck. So they haven't shown us, like, they could very much have Electro Dominance. I'm guessing that Grizzlebrand or potentially Kiki-Jiki are going into the graveyard. And again, this is where Growth Spiral is going to look fantastic. It'll allow us to hold up our Cryptic Command, but still Growth Spiral at the end of their turn, forcing some action. So this deck's going to try to jam an As Foretold or an Electro Dominance with Living In to put in Grizzlebrand or Kiki-Jiki Deceiver XR combo. I'm also getting to the point that Giga Drouse would actually be relevant. Alright, well they just let that go without even remotely thinking about it. And they must not have action because they're F6, and now they have to go to discard. Okay, I have no idea what opponent's doing then. Oh, that was a mistake. Now I don't have Cryptic Command up. Alright, so now that I don't have Cryptic Command up, it kind of forces my action. I'm still not 100% sure what they're doing. It's definitely something Grixis spell-based. This is going to get countered. Or remanded. Yep, there's the remand. And then our opponent's going to take action here, and we'll at least see what their strategy is. Yep. So it is some level of Goryo's Vengeance, As Foretold, or Electrickery Twin, or... Then, I really don't want to show our opponent much more. I guess get rid of the Serum Visions and see if they can jam Kiki and win. Yeah, it looks like they've got him. Alright, so know what opponent's doing now. Definitely going to be having Counterspell Wars. Fog to get rid of the infinite damage for a turn is probably going to be how we win. Pithing Needle's going to stop Kiki-Jiki, which means we have to really adjust our game plan here. Cryptic is going to be one of our few hard counters. I think Wilderness Reclamation is just coming out altogether. We have to interact with our opponent a lot harder than what our deck should be capable of. I guess that means a part the Water Veil comes down. Nexus probably comes out with Wilderness Reclamation because these two just pair so well together. This is probably just the package that comes out. We don't want to tap out and give them the opportunity to Living End us. If we tap out to give them a Howling Mine, and they have 2 red mana. And an Izzet Charm, and this is going to be a brutal matchup. Absolutely brutal. We have no interaction, 2 miracles in hand, but we have our mana. I think we can do better. It's not much better, but it's better. Yeah, so how much of our main game plan did we board out? I guess Void Snare would have been a decent level of interaction. So we took out 3, 7, 8, 9. Oh, I didn't fetch. And I want lands. I kind of want that, though. Oh, I have one. We're good. Yeah, we had to mix up a lot of the strategy of our deck to try to stay relevant in this. Alright, so they're definitely on Electro Dominance then. They just didn't show us very many red lands last time. Okay, they don't actually have counter magic up, and I'm perfectly okay to cycle this. So, counter target spell, return Blood Crypt. And see if we can just take them off their mana. Because like I said, this is going to be very painful for us to win if we can win it. Alright, so they have at least 3 lands already. I'd love to take an extra turn. And I would love a Dispel. Alright, some things are coming up Millhouse. And I want to get out Jace here. Opponent has definitely shown that they're on the Lightning Bolt plan, so I'm going to be Fate Sealing, and I kind of want to Fate Seal us. Yeah, I think it's more important to Fate Seal us at this point. And yes, Misty can go on bottom. If they do want to invest 2 Lightning Bolts at our Jace, they're going to have to do it over 2 turns because we bounce their red source, and we can also protect them to some extent. Whereas next turn we can just Brainstorm, hold up Dispel, and Dictate, and actually start to get some of our card advantage back. We have enough mana to start casting a lot of our take extra turn spells, so we are staged to go off. We did remove a lot of our core strategy here, though. This is Collective Brutality, discarding Kiki Jiki. Okay. That's fine, you get our Dispel. I guess the other Jace can go away. We do have the opportunity to shuffle it away. Here we're going to name Kiki Jiki the Mirror Breaker. So they won't be able to combo off without interacting with that first. And I don't want to forget, so I'm just going to go fetch now. Our opponent already knows our hand. It may have been correct to just run this out during their upkeep before they had the opportunity to draw a counterspell. But also got rid of their Blood Crypt. They must have given up on the red game plan, so we might be looking at an attempt to reanimate Kiki Jiki. And our deck is not being very kind. Alright, so Land and Fog can go away. We can play our land. Opponent is representing Cryptic. If they counter bounce, we can replay. And Nissa ends up getting enough attrition going up. There might be an argument to take her to 2 so that when we plush, she's out of bolt range. But if our opponent finds another red source in a bolt, that's just going to be our life. Let's see if they actually have hard counters. Nope. I would love to scry, get rid of the 2 cards that we put back on top that were terrible. And so our opponent has shown us Polluted Deltas, Watery Graves, Deceiver Exarch. We haven't seen any other lands from them. Pithy Needle, a land, doesn't seem that beneficial. I doubt they're on Echoing Truth, so we could just run out another Pithy Needle on Kiki Jiki. I'm guessing it's correct to name... They're on Drowned Catacombs, they're probably a budget list. They might only have the 4 polluted deltas. Bloodstained Mire is actually a little expensive online. Scalding Tarns are way expensive. I think I just want to run out the second Kiki Jiki and be mana efficient. Okay, an Ambush Viper Snapcaster doesn't mean much. Seeing the Snapcaster, though, I'm going to name Bloodstained Mire. Or am I? They've got 4 cards in hand. They're going to go up to 6. They could have a single bounce spell. No, I'm on Kiki. They haven't shown me any lands. I don't want to blind name one. It is possible that Jace dies here. Snapcaster attack into a Bolt. They did have the Tarn. Going after Nissa? That's interesting. I heard they were unbanning Jace. I honestly thought that Modern was going to fall apart, but instead they're attacking Nissa. Alright, so this is potentially some missequencing here. I wanted to see deeper on Nissa as opposed to brainstorming with Jace. If I see a fetch land, this makes more sense. And I've only seen 2 out of 6 so far. Fog could potentially save combat damage. I don't really think that matters, so that can go to bottom. I do want the Time Warp. And do I have them on Surgical? If they're on Surgical, they could go after my Time Warp, but that'd shuffle my deck for me. I think that's fine. If they don't show any intent to Surgical yet, I'll probably just brainstorm and keep it with Jace. Wilderness Reclamation does give Cryptic Command and Gigadress a lot more reach in what it can do. Counterbounce. Okay. Yep, that might have been sequencing to actually want me to play out Jace first. And if they bolt Nissa, just lost a lot of advantage. I probably should have stopped in upkeep and tapped down their red source. It's actually still probably correct to do it here. So replicate, we're going to make 1 copy, tap down Snapcaster Mage. I guess I can still technically float the red here and still draw the bolt. Yeah, I really should have stopped on upkeep if this was my game plan. And let's see what you got, opponent. Alright, so I'll be drawing Time Warp for turn. Yeah, what would you like to try to take? Likely going after the Jace. Again, if you have doubles, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go after them. I could also see them being on Remand since they left the 2 mana up. Yep, they took down Jace. growth spirals are redraws. I don't think that's good enough. I'd prefer to see something that actually matters. And we'll see if they kept the remand around. If they did, this is going down. Negate. Alright, even a harder counter. So, I'm a little confused why they left black in their deck if they're not Gorios. They just seem to be a Grixis control list that's splashing black for brutality. And I did potentially overboard. It's probably Deceiver Exarch, untap a blue mana, hold up Dispel. Or their own Jace. We only took out 2 extra turn spells. We should start seeing a lot of them. I'd love to draw a land and a Cryptic Command. Pithing Needle, unfortunately, if I name Jace, is going to stop me from activating my Jace. I think my deck has a little bit more power to abuse Jace. They're kind of getting a fair strategy out of him while we're using him to seed a lot of extra combo pieces every turn and getting multiple activations before we pass back and allow them to use theirs again. So opponent's definitely representing something with mana since they took the shock. Their life total doesn't matter in this matchup, and they may have just come to that conclusion and are bluffing. But they just saw 3 fresh cards with Jace, and we've been making them draw additional cards every turn. There's half of what I wanted. I guess that works. Alright. So counter target spell and draw a card? No, I want to bounce a land. If I... Oh, but they would still remand up. Why did they leave 3 mana up? Do they have another Vendilion Clique that they might use? I think I'm just on counter draw. It's the highest upside. And they have the Dispel. Alright. Well, our Jace definitely will not be going the distance. Jason to a Brainstorm with Miracle on top is probably our best line, but they're representing Negate with the Dispel backup, so if they have Negate, we probably just have to scoop it up. If they have Remand, it means that they don't have a hard counter, and we might still have a shot. Our Dictative Crew Fix is drawing them into their control cards, and we're not able to resolve an extra turn spell, so we're falling pretty far behind. If we plus Jace, he's still going to die on board. Yeah, so we can give this one more turn because they're on soft counters now, but... Ideally, getting a Miracle to resolve would be great. Opponent with 3 cards in hand, though, is not looking too good. And the active Jace. Who did they Fate Seal? Targeted us and left a card on top. Alright, land doesn't mean too much here. We typically need a lot of mana, but unless we actually have some way to interact, it doesn't matter. Do you have the hard counter, opponent? Yeah. And there's no coming back from this. They're going to have the active Snapcaster with a Cryptic command, and we have a Dictate. Alright, so that was a little bit on the rough side. Oh, I never updated match record in that. Probably overboarded. We did see plenty of cards, but opponent just had firmer answers than we did. Remand is probably decent in this list. I think that Growth Spiral took its spot, though, as the 2-drop. Other considerations for this deck, Thing in the Ice on the sideboard for the creature matchups is pretty good. You also take a lot of turns, and by the time that you're ready to attack with it, it returns all the blockers to their owner's hand. I went with Nissa instead of multiple copies of Thing in the Ice on the sideboard. Really wasn't sure what I'd be most afraid of in this list. We put up a fight against a lot of things. Control did seem pretty bad, though, which is why we have 4 Dispels and 4 Swan Songs, so that if we end up putting 5 or 7 mana into a spell, we just have 1 mana to stay in the counter war. Burn also seems pretty horrendous. Pulse of Marasa being able to pick up a fetch land and gain 6 life was probably one of the better considerations there. Fog will not get around Skullcrack, but again, Burn just felt like it was going to be super bad. We can leverage the fact that we are green to get life gain and combat damage prevention. Howling Mine, I can't imagine Late Line of Anticipation would be good in this deck if all of our spells flash. It would be interesting to be able to hold up interactions with the Wilderness Reclamation to potentially like cast a Time Warp at their end step with the mana that we untapped with Wilderness Reclamation. This just feels so slow. And we have no extra draw spells. Alright, well, Chaining Cryptics is better than nothing. And we're playing against Storm. Oh, no. Another Living End deck. Alright. Alright, gonna do this correctly this time. We want to put Temporal Mastery on top, Time Warp on top of that. Next turn we'll draw Time Warp, then Temporal Mastery, and this time we actually have the land drops. Yep, Living End it is. We'll see how fast of a start they get. So this deck that our opponent's playing is trying to use Electro Dominance and As Foretold to cheat out Living End. This is Living End right here. It's basically a fancy way of saying if you can cheat casting it, put all creatures in play into the graveyard and all creatures in the graveyard into play. So our opponent's cycling, they're able to pay red to discard the card to draw a fresh card and replace it. And they're putting these Draft Shaft into the graveyard, just 6/4 beaters. And they're essentially just trying to get to the point that they'll cast Living End and have a bunch of creatures and clear the board and all that fun stuff. Okay, I thought I made a mistake there. So, opponent had enough mana for Vendilion Click. If you reveal a Miracle card, they can Vendilion Click in response and take it away from you. And then you can't cast the card anymore. I'd already tapped my mana, which means I would have wasted the turn. I just wasn't focusing on the opponent's plays. I was trying to describe what they're doing. But like they have a 5/5 Hexproofer and 2 6/4s. Like if they Electro Dominance at any point, then we won't be able to handle their board state. And I need to represent Cryptic Command here. I want to keep the fetch land in case we see a Jace. So gonna have to take the shock. Okay, so they're just cycling away. I was a little afraid that was going to be the Electro Dominance for 0. Meanwhile, while they're working on the strategy, they get to suspend Ancestral Vision or cast it for free with either of the two cards that I mentioned. They get to draw 3 cards. It's very unfair strategy, but... So I would like to return target permanent and draw a card. I'm going to return the untapped land to hopefully keep them off mana a little bit, and if they have interaction, they're going to have to use it here. It's also possible they just go for the Electro Dominance, and then I'll have to chain Cryptic Commands, but... Yep, so they're shooting us for 1, and then they get cast a card for free, and they're going to cast Living End, potentially as Ancestral. Oh, there it is. Alright, well, we now get to take a couple extra turns, and we can also chain Cryptics to stay alive, so... forcing the action kind of benefited us. And that's less than good. Alright, so we're going to counter the Ancestral Vision and tap down their team and see if we can chain some stuff together. Alright, so counter target spell, tap all creatures your opponents control. And then if they have any counter spells, we're a little screwed. The plus side is they're running Electro Dominance, As Foretold, Ancestral Vision, Living End, Cyclers. Like, they shouldn't have a lot of room for interaction in their deck, so as long as we can keep them tapped down or start chaining together, we should be alright. And I don't care if I see a Jace at this point. I need to thin my deck, otherwise we're just going to lose. Alright, so currently on the table for 19 damage. Bouncing this will still... Yep, so we're on tap draw. And again, I do want to thin my deck. It's not statistically relevant, 1 in 41, but I need to see something other than lands here. Tap all creatures, draw a card. And they have their own Cryptic. Alright, that's game. So this is where Graveyard Hate would probably benefit us. Fog is looking like it's going to hold a decent amount of value. Dispel, probably not as good as Swan Song. Swan Song can hit sorceries. As far as cuts, it might just be this package. I feel like I've been wanting to cut this package a lot. And the fact that opponent already had Cryptic Command in deck and is going to sideboarding where they have a lot more control magic, it might be correct to hold the Dispels in the deck as well, but that means cutting probably a non-zero number amount of Howling Mines, maybe a Growth Spiral or two. That feels right. Part of the problem when creating your sideboard, you're technically supposed to have matchups in mind where you say, like, for burn, these 4 cards are bad, and then you go get the 4 good cards in the sideboard. I didn't really put enough thought into this deck to try to get every single matchup. It's kind of... Modern is a very open format, and so I just went for, hey, here's some life gain, here's some counter magic. I assume counter magic's going to be bad. Our main game plan is to play a lot of extra turn spells, and it's hard to cut from the strategy. Even adding green to the mono blue list was like, okay, well, there are a couple of cards that look like they might be flex, but you're changing the core of the deck. You just lose so much of your primary strategy when you have to board this hard. And this is Halleyed Mine into Dictate into hopefully Cryptic. Seems good enough. I'm not really a huge fan of the Desert Ceradon package for living end. What our opponent was doing with Kiki Jiki before and having loot spells feels like it's significantly stronger. It's hated out a little bit easier, but you can still always just go on the tempo game plan like the old Splinter Twin lists. Like here, if I have Rest in Peace, our opponent's just locked out of the game and they can't do a whole lot. They get Ancestral Vision and then start playing 6/4s, but if we were a typical control list, they just wouldn't have anything to do about it. They have to invest so much of their time into recycling, and then they get out of vanilla 6/4 that won't even get in past a Gurmag Angler, or their strategy loses so much footing against anything like Taxes, which is already underpowered. That always feels so bad. Last game, if we had any extra draw spells, it would have felt significantly better too. Our opponent's going to be taxing their mana trying to cycle cards here. Like there goes the Riverwinder. If we don't get a land here, probably going to get a Drouse, just that we have more chances to see one. And opponent is using the extra draws to just discard creatures. It's kind of cute. So depending on how many counter spells the opponent put in, we actually might be on a really good track to just win if we untap. Because we'll just be able to chain together Cryptic Commands or just slam Jace, and then they have to actually Living End. If they run out a second red source here, it's a little more tricky because they'll end up getting 3 4/4s and a 5/5. So we'd have to hold up the Cryptic, but if they don't show us a second red source for the Electro Dominance, we should just be able to slam Jace and then set up for the win. Alright, well, do you have a counterspell? Because none of these creatures will have haste until they do something else for it. Yeah, that's fine. Is it Charm Away? There's the Jace. We will brainstorm putting back a, I guess, Dictate and Temporal Mastery. Next turn we'll draw a card and start going off. We don't actually have a land in the top 2 cards of our deck. So if they go for As Foretold Living End here, we're probably going to use Jace to bounce for our 2 turns and bounce with Cryptic Command. And then that's just going to leave them with a 5/5 on the table and multiple cards in hand they have to get rid of. I think opponent is realizing that if they tap out for As Foretold here, things are going to go south pretty quickly. We did give them an opportunity to do something, but they didn't have the red-red for Electro Dominance. Ooh, a Fulminator Mage. Alright, that'll actually stop us for a turn. Alright, well we are looking at 5 cards, and then we get to untap and look at 5 more cards. I want to put Temporal Mastery down first, just in case I need to draw more action. We will cast that for sure. On the Brainstorm plan, since they didn't pressure us, and, ooh boy. Would love to see some lands there. So, I can put one of these cards on the bottom of the library with Serum Visions. I think that means that Howling Mine is going away. So Serum. And I need a land, so anything that's not a land is going away. Get rid of Dictate. And still not seeing lands. That feels so improbable. Okay, so that can go on top, followed by that. We have 3 to spell, so what does that actually mean we want to lead on? We have to... Okay, I actually think our plan is to Giga Drouse the 2 red sources at their upkeep with Dispel up. Alternatively, I can just set up Dictative Crewfix with Dispel, but that means opponent gets to go crazy doing whatever they want to do. Okay, I don't care about... Oh, I thought I had to put 2 cards back on top still. Alright, taking the shock, and I think that means we're shipping it back. Now the question is, do I want to Giga Drouse on upkeep, or do I want to Dictate? I think I'd prefer to Dictate just to make sure I start seeing lands again, because our opponent shouldn't be able to interact in a meaningful way. Oh boy. I like all these cards. I guess Time Warp goes away. And Giga Drouse. Alright, opponent, do you want to go for it? Guess not. So again, putting Temporal Mastery down first so we can draw cards first. Alright, so they are still representing Electro Dominance here. Need to keep that in mind. I think they recognize that if we take this turn, they're probably going to lose. Even if they win this counter war, we'll probably just... They won't do anything super impactful for their turn, then we'll just untap and win. Alright, so tuck the duel and a cryptic. We are taking an extra turn. Take our turn. Add Temporal Mastery back on top. Do 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 do. All right. Just looking for Nissa at this point. Although I guess that wasn't actually a turn spell. Okay, well that's not looking as good. Oh, we're taking the extra turn. Derp to derp. Alright, so Brainstorm. Put 2 lands back. Fetch again. Time Warp. All the stuffs. Do we start bouncing their lands just because we can? Turn target permanent, draw card. I don't want to give them Talaria West. They can take the fast land that's going to enter tapped. I'm going to hang on to the fog just in case. Maybe not. Oh, we don't have a Nexus anymore. Alright, well there's part the Water Veil, so we're good. Cast with Awaken, we'll make the Forest. Beats for 6, extra turn. And there's Nissa. Nissa for 7 can ultimate and still live. Not like it matters, and kill opponent. I do like Nissa in this deck. It feels significantly better than Snapcaster Beat. Snapcaster being able to recast Time Warp feels good, but almost all these other extra turn spells exile themselves. I feel like I'm undervaluing Wilderness Reclamation without Nexus of Fate, but there are just times when we have to be able to interact with opponent, and tapping out for Wilderness Reclamation and getting encountered feels so bad. It's probably just run it back. This is last round of the league, though, so we're not going to cash out, but it's been fun. Slow, dirtily modern decks. This doesn't do anything meaningful towards our game plan. This is a Serum Visions. I don't believe that they can collect a Brutality on one. They aren't on Simian Spirit Guide. And I kind of am okay holding a Dispel in the back pocket. Although I think I need to hit my lands here. Hitting my lands for Cryptic and Jace are going to be more valuable than holding up a single counter spell. Second Cryptic's a little rough. And all the Temporal Masteries. Alright, so what does this mean? It means I can put this on top, then this on top. Next turn, draw Flooded Strand, play Mikokoro, and then cast the Temporal Mastery with the Flooded Strand. Hopefully see another land. Opponent starts their cycling. This actually feels better. I can draw the Miracle and then crack the land, as opposed to needing to... I'm scared that if I top deck a Forest, then I won't be able to cast Cryptic, where this is going to allow me to grab an island. Opponent's getting all their cycling on. Alright, and we'll see if they kept their remand. So we're going to reveal and crack. Get an island, and see if our opponent allows us to get an extra turn. I can't imagine they do. Oh, they do. Interesting. Alright, well, looking for any kind of island here. I suppose that works. I was a little scared of Electro Dominance there. That would have actually killed us. It's 12, 16, 21 damage. Which is why I wanted the Cryptic, but if they didn't have it, they didn't have it. And we can see if they drew a 3-mana counterspell. I don't think they mind drawing cards. They can definitely do things with the cards they draw. And I'm going to have to hold up Cryptic basically until the end of time here. Is it Charm? Draw 2, discard 2. I'm actually going to run out Cryptic Command here because I would like it to get countered if they have Dispel. I'm not going to win any Dispel wars, and if they have to run out Dispel on this now, it means that this one's more likely to resolve. Their creatures won't have haste with Electro-Dominant, so we're not in threat of dying. We can try to manage the board as much as possible if they go for it now, but if they were able to get it on end step, we would just lose. An opponent's going to discard. I don't know if they're just missing a lot of lands in that deck to make it function, or if they legitimately are just trying to get more stuff into the graveyard. They have lethal if they were to living end and get an attack in. Yeah, they have As Foretold, so they're definitely trying to hold up interaction. I can't even Serum Visions here. So it looks like it's got to instep, discard Serum Visions. Our hand is pretty well sculpted. Alright, so same logic. I have multiple Cryptic Commands here. I'd rather they start countering what I have. Since I don't have Dispels, I will lose a counter war. So let's return the fast land and draw a card. And let's just see if we can steal a little bit of tempo here. Because if they're using Is It Charm to loot and they can see that we're missing land drops and have expensive spells, they clearly have some number of counter spells in hand. And me only being able to cast one is going to make us lose this game. If they started pushing their board state, we would probably be dead by now. Yep, there's the Is It Charm. And unfortunately, we draw no lands again. If we ever start comboing off, we are going to combo off, but we have to ship it back and see if they can make anything happen. I guess here it's discard Time Warp. Swan Song is at least a little bit of coverage here. We should be able to win a small counter war. It does mean that I have to stop using my Cryptic Commands aggressively, though. I can use this aggressively, though. Because if they go for it now, then I can like start bouncing their board, tapping it down. I also have Swan Song up. It's very possible they're just sitting on one living end, and if we snag it off the Electro-Dominance, then this is just going to be a huge win. There aren't a ton of... I guess there's Invasive Surgery, but nobody runs it that can counter an instant for one. Or sorcery for one. Dispel's quite common, but not sorcery. What are you discarding at this point, opponent? Another as foretold kind of makes sense. It's kind of like Wilderness Reclamation for our deck. It does enable a lot, but they can't tap out for it or they will lose. Opponents also slowed down playing quite a bit. We were like 4 minutes behind on clock because of how many turns we took. We got down to like the last 8 cards in our deck before we saw Nissa. And an Ingot Chewer. Interesting. A lot of opponents today are getting rid of Artifact Hate. I don't even think I want to redraw Serum Visions. My hand is so stacked that, like, if we win a counter war and then start taking turns, we're just going to win. So I think I'm on discard Serum Visions and probably a Time Warp. Maybe Jace. Actually, it's probably just Temporal Mastery. We don't have any other way to stack it back on top of our deck. And we've been missing our land drops. I'll be casting Time Warp before Temporal Mastery, and if Jace is active, we've already won. So if opponent does actually resolve a Living End, we are definitely bored on the table, or dead on the table. We have 10 damage of Hexproof, which means that even if we bounce everything else, we're kind of screwed there. They're suspending Ancestral? Alright, well, I'm still going to continue having us draw cards here. Opponent breaking parity with 3 more cards is going to be interesting, but they're already discarding to hand size, so that feels like a weird play to make. I guess it is only 1 mana, but... Alright, so I currently have Cryptic Command with Dispel and Swan Song. I might force Cryptic Command this turn. You discard 2, so that's probably going to be a Time Warp, and maybe Jace? Did I board out the other Jace? I think it's just the other Temporal Mastery. So next turn I'll have 5, 6, 7 mana, which means I can Cryptic on Instep with Protection or Time Warp with Protection. So I think this is when I can finally start making my play. We fell pretty far behind on lands there. So opponent did draw Talaria West. Talaria West allows them to pay 3 mana to go get Living End, which means they definitely have one in hand. Statistically, they probably have one. They run 4 and they've seen half their deck, but they have opted out of the ability to pay 3 mana to go get their win condition. Chalice on 1. Interesting. Alright, so opponents decide this is the turn they want to make their play too. So I think I'm going to be on counter bounce one of their fast lands. And we can see where it goes. I was not expecting to see Chalice of the Void. I mean, it makes sense. They run a couple of 2-mana enablers, but they're not on the Faithless Looting plan because almost everything they have pays 1 to activate. But if everything they have costs 2 to activate, that means that we're basically winning this counter war. So we should be in a good spot. We should be in a really good spot. This is probably like Is It Charm and... Did they show us Dispel last game? I thought they showed us Dispel this game. I may have been ramped up for a counter war that I did not need to be in. Alright. Here goes nothing. Show me what you got. You've got me on my toes, opponent. Are they letting it go? There's a remand. I'm good to dispel it. Alright, so the way that it's currently sitting, opponent is casting Electro Dominance to cast Living End for free. They are currently doing 0 damage with Electro Dominance, so that's not a threat. I have the counter target sorcery out of Swansong. They believe that they set themselves up for Dispel as my only interaction here. I'm going to let this resolve to get the Electro Dominance out of their hand, and then I'm going to counter the Living End. Then that way they have significantly less gas than they originally thought they did. Then that means that they get a Swan, and I take an extra turn, and this should be game. Alright, so how much mana do I actually have now? 5. I need 1 more turn before I can start really going off. But that means that Nissa gets to come down and start scrying for me. X is 1. I don't really want either of these, just looking for an extra turn spell. So Jace will come down. I believe it is correct actually here to scry first to try to get my turn spell, which I didn't. Then that means that Jace gets to brainstorm. Ooh, and still didn't get a turn spell. Alright, well, we're definitely going to be fetching for turn. I did put a land back on top. That was intentional, so I could Growth Spile and draw it, and put it into play. Crack now because I don't want that last land, and now it's on opponent to be able to get through another Dispel and Swansong with 4 cards in hand. So of note, that needs to be an As Foretold and a Living End, or an Electro Dominance and Living End. We probably should never board this much for counter wars. It does really water down what we can do. I think I just saw 2 turns with 2 draws. Is 4 cards, 6 cards, 9 cards, and didn't see an extra turn spell. And that's kind of unacceptable. And I'd love to make Okoro here, but I don't believe I can. there might be an argument to dictate, but I really don't want my opponent to Electro Dominance for 1 and win that war and have me lose Jace. And still threat bringing back their entire board state. Opponent is hitting the point where they probably need to start considering running out their draft shaft. That's kind of the problem with the draft shaft version of the deck, is it just isn't very strong if your opponent stops it. Like if you're paying 6 mana for a 6/4 vanilla, you're falling behind. Opponent's trying to figure out if they want to take action here, which means they probably have something. They still have 2 more turns before Ancestral Vision comes down, but if they're drawing 3 cards a turn, Ancestral's not going to be as impactful as it is in most matchups. Of note, they probably actually need to save Living In for the turn that I actually ult Nissa. They have Cryptic Command? Counter and draw. So the draw tells me they don't have a lot of action here. They're also afraid of the Dictate. I'm inclined to dispel this. The drawback is Electro Dominance for 1 on Jace Living End, but I'm still going to be seeing... Yeah, I'll be seeing 3 cards if this Dictate resolves, and I'll be able to scry with Nissa. This doesn't feel great. Again, that's why I was talking about the timing, but... Yep. Oh, alright, they didn't have the Living End. So the timing on this is they resolve Electro Dominance, and then they say if they want to cast a spell or not. Yeah, Jace dying there is perfectly fine. I just didn't want to have to try to deal with their board without being able to do something first. So, scry. Don't want more lands. Temporal Mastery. Opponent's tapped out, so we can draw a card. Breeding Pool can be tapped. Might be an argument to set up for Serum Vision since we're likely winning here, but yeah, I probably should have. Because if I see a turn spell, I'm just ulting Nissa and then we're going to win. So 4 cards in hand. I guess Mikakoro first. And the deck does not want to cooperate. So we have 2 counter spells for 5 cards. Let's scry and see if we can draw into an extra turn. So 6 mana, we would need to draw a card for 2. We have a draw card for 4. I think we play defense for 1 more turn and we should be able to win. The question is... Okay, so we have 8 mana. We can Giga Drowse for 3. But if they Living In and that's all that they do, we win. So let's Giga Drowse for 3 and take out their dual lands. So target Steam Vents. Escalate twice. That'll leave us 5 mana for Cryptic and Swan Song. 1, 2, 3. The bird's not going to do anything relevant here. Wow, that is some deep tech. All right. So what they're doing is they're cycling to counter the replicate trigger. And they tap the land that we were initially going to tap down, so that's all fine. Spending 3 mana to counter tapping 3 lands is basically all we were doing in the first place. They just get a fresh draw of it. And they draw 3 cards. Regardless of what opponent does, I'm going to have to Cryptic Command here. Let's see what opponent... Okay, opponent does realize this is a threat. So, turn target permanent, draw. Always doing the fast land because that means that they have to replay it and it'll come in tapped. And I don't care if they counter this. I'm more concerned about the part of the Water Veil on the top of our deck. We do have to be careful of not milling out here. We're going to be drawing 3 cards with the Dictates. Then if we take an extra turn, we'll have Nissa's creatures attacking, so that should be fine. I really don't care if you draw a card, and Cryptic's not going to matter, so... So the 2 on the far right will become creatures. I should have floated the mana first, but that's fine. Cast with Awaken. We can target Miko Koro. I'm not going to be activating it. We'll take an extra turn and have lethal on board. And GG's opponent. 2 half control decks, batting it out for the finals. Ended up going 2-3. Not horrible. We lost to Artifacts and Experimental Frenzy. Them drawing additional cards off of our Howling Mine and Dictative Crucifix is just horrible. They are casting stuff for free. We're trying to cast stuff for 7. We beat Death's Shadow, which is always a good thing to say. If we can beat out the tempo decks that apply a lot of pressure, discard our hand, it means that the deck at least has a little bit of staying power to it. We ended up beating the Living End control deck at the end. It wasn't a real control deck. I do feel like that matchup's going to be pretty bad. We did lose versus... Oh my gosh, I'm already blanking on all the matchups we did. That was a pretty long league at 2.5 hours. Yeah, I mean, we did some fun stuff. Like, if we just look at the record here, this was the Artifacts, this was Death's Shadow, we won that pretty decisively. This was Jund. We probably could have beat Jund, but we got mana screwed in one of the matches, and the other time we got flooded. It was probably just poor mulliganing decisions on my part. I'm trying to remember what this matchup was, because we got wrecked. I'm sure that you guys just watched it, so you would know. Little fried right now, and the dog's freaking out. But yeah, overall it went all right. We put up a fight in at least these 4 matches. I honestly can't remember what this was. It was another combo deck, I want to say. But I'm getting held up on that. Overall, this deck was fun. Wilderness Reclamation. So I kept cutting it, and that was because of my dry run league. This deck is actually quite hard to pilot. If you saw in the Death Shadow game, we had the Giga play where our opponent just sat there and kind of stared at it because we had to put 4 mana into it. And they miscountered. They probably tapped the additional land as a mistake. I don't think that was game breaking for them, but being able to say you're going to make 4 copies of a spell to tap 2 creatures is something that isn't very apparent when you first start looking at the deck. Like, that's a high level tech play that you need to understand how Replicate works. I do think this deck can use more Giga Drowses. It did feel like an all-star when we saw it. It was kind of okay the turns that we had it. Our last opponent actually had to Nimble Obstructionist to get rid of the 3 lands getting tapped. And we were tapping 3 lands with it. Like, he had to do that just to cycle the card to try to see another out, because that effect that late in the game was that powerful. Hey, thank you for the follow. But Nexus of Fate, you really only need 1. I know it's one of Saffron Olive's cards, and he was like trying to get it out of the treasure chest and like running a lot of them. In Standard, it's a 4 of. You need to use Search for His Content to go fetch for all the copies. But in Modern, you need 1 of, because it's just going to get shuffled back in. And while it's strong with Wilderness Reclamation, what you want to be doing with that mana is playing Dictative Crucifix and Cryptic Command, not casting your additional Nexus of Fate. Like, yes, it's great, but you're never going to cast Nexus on turn 4, because you're going to run out the Wilderness Reclamation for 4, and then you're going to untap and have 4 mana, and what do you do with that? Cryptic Command's the obvious answer. Dictate's pretty good. I love Growth Spiral. I only have 3 in the deck currently. It probably needs to be a 4 of. The number of times that it's been impactful was surprising. Also, it can trigger your miracle draws on your opponent's steps if you do scry into them with Nissa or you brainstorm them with Jace. So that's 4 mana, take an extra turn, instant speed, put a land into play. That also all resolves before the miracle trigger, so the land can pay for the miracle trigger. Just some really fun interactions in this deck. It is a little slow and dirtily. It's a blue deck. You take extra turns. We have a very high curve. Like, we have 11 cards that cost 5 or more, and we have 9 cards that cost 4. That's a third of our deck. That's very slow for Modern, but it does powerful things, and when we go off, we go off. Overall, though, it's fun. Like, I highly recommend it. There's definitely something here. If we see a good blue or green early play that can help develop our mana and actually, like, delay, it'd be fantastic. Fog Bank is kind of a consideration. The only decks in Modern that actually have an immediate hate for it is Burn, and they have to pop a Skullcrack in order to make it so that the damage can't be prevented, or they have to hit it with a Lightning Bolt. Either way, 2 mana, a lot of stall. Help you get there. The deck is tight, though. The sideboard needs some work, and the deck is pretty tight. You need a lot of cards to enable it. Well, everyone, thanks for watching, and have a good one.